player that comes from an economically challenged background that doesn't think that athletes should be paid, you know. And I think it's just the way in society in general. You usually have all these, you know, rich or well off, or they don't have to be filthy rich, but just people that have never had to struggle, and they're like, oh yeah, it shouldn't be paid, you know, that's not the way it is. And I just hate I hate that aspect of this argument, because why does anyone care that if someone who needs the money benefits from it? You know, it's not coming out of their pocket, right? These schools have shown that they are making way more money than they ever need from the footballs, the basketballs, whatever. We have coaches making, upwards $8 and $9 million. They're building these 8-figure facilities, buildings that have, all the bells and whistles, and all that is so they can attract the players. But if they even just took a 10th or a 20th, such a minuscule amount of that, what I consider excess, and gave it to the players, it would make such a huge difference. It's like, God forbid Dabo, or God forbid Saban, or God forbid, Brian Kelly or whatever. All these guys only made, $4 million a year. Like, it just, instead of, $8 million, $7 million.
Well,
but if you take that $4 million and you divide it out, like I said, I hate making this part of the argument, because then that makes it seem like the school should have to pay. But I'm just kind of tying this all together. If you took, that $4 million and gave it to the student, on average team, that would be about $45,000 a player. So, and that's a huge amount of money. But that, like I said, has nothing to do with what California is proposing, which go out and make what you can and earn what you're worth.
That's the one thing is, like, with this law being passed, I think some people are literally confusing it they think the school's going to have to pay. All it's saying is that the player themselves can go out and make money off themselves. So, like, they could go make money, like, if they have a YouTube channel themselves, they can make money off it. They can sign autographs. They can sign their jerseys. Like, why
exactly.
not? Why not? What is the issue?
Believe me, I've tried to come up with an answer for many, many years, and I can't get it. Another thing that a lot of those people against it like to say is that, only the best of the best are going to make any money. Well, I agree. Only the best of the best are going to make, life-changing money. But if you don't think that, an average college football player who is more likely than not to have a decent-sized social media following can make a couple $100 a month just simply off his social media, and like you said, a YouTube or any of that, then you just don't have a fundamental understanding of how the advertising world works right now. There's a site, it's called Open Sponsorship, and basically what that site does, it just lists athletes from every single sport. Any athlete can join, and anyone can go there and pay that athlete, to do advertising for them. And there's archery guys on there with 1,000 Twitter followers. So it's like, if the archery guy with 1,000 Twitter followers can make money, you mean to tell me that the college football player with 10,000 followers can't make money? It's just silly. It just shows that people don't really have a fundamental understanding of how social media revenue is generated.
This is obviously like a topic we could probably talk about all day, but we're going to slowly move topics, because we did have some other topics that I wanted us to hit on while you're on here.
Sure.
We were talking a little bit also about like some of the major games, and you also added one that we could talk about that involves two Florida schools next week. But I guess we'll start with like some of the out-of-state games. I did see a pretty big one for this week. Trinity Christian will be going up to Colquitt County. Trinity hasn't really done that bad considering when you look at their schedule, may arguably be the best one in all of Florida. And they're at 3-4 right now.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been an up and down year for them. It started out rough, but as you said, that they had they played such a tough schedule. It kind of looked, like they were not going to have a very good year. But then they, come back with the big win over Carroll City, and now it's like, well, maybe they're forced to be reckoned with. So now we'll definitely see, when they take on Colquitt County, if they're really a force to be reckoned with, or maybe, Carroll City is not that great.
I will say this one thing about, I got a chance to see Colquitt County during the kickoff classic week. The biggest thing with them, depth like crazy. I could have sworn there had to be at least 100 players on that roster.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting much for them this year. I knew they would be decent, but when I say I wasn't expecting much, I just mean more of a national power. They obviously had the coaching change, moving on from Probst and the legend that he is, and that obviously could have caused a lot of turmoil. It seems like so far maybe not. The loss to Valdosta was a little bit surprising, definitely. But then the win over Grayson to me wasn't all that surprising. I actually had him in the expert pick'em, but that was more just because I wasn't convinced about Grayson as much as I thought it was good for Colquitt County. Grayson obviously had the big win over Marietta, but that game was very fluky from the standpoint of it was in terrible weather. I think it ended up finally taking about 5 hours. Marietta turned the ball over a ton in their, in the red zone, and the game was just very, very fluky. And Grayson hadn't really showed well, other than in that game this year. So when Colquitt beat him, I wasn't that surprised. But we'll definitely see. This is definitely a good measuring stick for both Colquitt and Trinity. I do expect Colquitt to win. It's hard for Florida teams to go up to Georgia and come out unscathed.
Yeah, I agree. And for when I look at it, it's Trinity with a roster of maybe 35 or 40 versus Colquitt over 100. That depth's just going to wear them down. I can't see Trinity hanging with that level of depth when they go up to Georgia.
Yeah, and the refs up there will make sure that
the infamous South Georgia refs. I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
Another out-of-state game, which this one's going to have national championship implications. IMG Academy up to St. Francis. This is actually going to be the second time on this podcast talking about that matchup. We talked about. We had another guest on early in the year, and I talked about this matchup. And I feel like St. Francis, they're at home in Baltimore for this one. I feel like St. Francis is going to knock off IMG at home next week.
Yeah, I tend to think so as well. I think St. Francis is really, really good. Mater Dei obviously had their way with them in that game out there, which I wasn't surprised to see Mater Dei win. I was surprised to see Mater Dei win as easily as they did. That was definitely a statement game. St. Francis is really good. You just have to be able to throw the ball effectively to beat Mater Dei. And, you have to score with them because that Mater Dei offense is so good, and St. Francis just couldn't do that. But I don't think IMG has the firepower that Mater Dei had. And I think it's going to be more of a trenches game, where St. Francis's big guys line up with IMG. And it's like you said, it's at home. And I think St. Francis could pull that one out. Now, if IMG does somehow beat St. Francis, around the same way that Mater Dei did, now we're getting into a definite national title type debate and discussion that's going to be had if IMG stays undefeated and the California team, whoever it is, whether it be St. John Bosco or Mater Dei, stays undefeated, and if Duncanville runs the table, then we're definitely going to have another debate like we've never seen before.
That I guess is one of the cases where it would definitely be nice if we actually had like a small playoff format like for this high school football. But the only problem is, you look at California, they're already playing 16, 17 games. It just wouldn't be logistical sense to try to throw two more in there.
Yeah, I don't know when it's going to come, and I'm not even going to throw a guess, but I would not be shocked if we see a national, whatever you want to call it, a national high school conference with these academies, kind of playing each other, because, now there's so much recruiting, and there's more money involved every single year. And these schools are just, beating up on their local competition, usually because they're, recruiting the best players from that locale. So how players compete. So I would not be shocked, and I've heard it's in the works. Obviously, it's going to take a little while, but there is a national conference of privates or academies or whatever you want to call them that is in the works. And I think the purists, the high school football purists, are not going to like that, but they already don't like what's happening. So I think it's the next logical step.
Another IMG game that be upcoming, which might be very useful for like making a national championship case, they're going to be traveling to play Hoover over in Alabama, even though I got to think if they can somehow knock off St. Francis, they'll have no trouble beating Hoover pretty badly when they play.
Yeah, if that game was the next week, on the schedule the next week after the St. Francis game, there would be, maybe a chance for a letdown. They're coming off what would be a huge win, and then having to travel to Alabama. But, with it being 2 weeks later, I just, I can't see that one being much of a struggle. Hoover doesn't even appear to be the best team in Alabama this year, and I don't think it's gonna be much of a game. Plus, it would be the last game for IMG of the year, so they're probably going to want to make a statement.
I also would, even though I respect the fact that Hoover wants to always play, I've been playing IMG last few years, but they really should try to find a different team in Florida to play.
Yeah, well, Hoover, they probably, even though they shouldn't at this point, they probably. Well, it's a big name game. They're a big brand. A big brand program. I think they like keeping the brand up more than the actual competitiveness of a football game. Yeah, I mean, they could definitely play a team from Florida that doesn't have the name that IMG would have. That would probably be a better game, but I don't think they want to risk losing that game because it kind of tarnishes the reputation, and B, it just doesn't, like I said, it's not as flashy.
Well, I can think of at least one name that they might be able to replace them with that would hold the same value of playing.
What school would that be?